Welcome to Season 4 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive. My name is Nicholas Steele, founder of JJP Talent Solutions, an Australian IT recruitment company. With over 20 years' expertise, I provide insights on how you can transform your career to the next level. This podcast was born out of the 2020 global pandemic. Season 1 was launched to help people through the pandemic by talking to a variety of experts about topics such as psychology, finance, and health. Season 2 focused on more work-related issues, including HR, marketing, and leadership. Season 3 centered on the IT industry, where I talked to startup founders and senior IT people who revealed the secrets to their success. And now it's time for Season 4. This season continues the focus on tech leaders, as well as startup and scale-up founders about their stories and insights. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm delighted to introduce Colin Goudie and Charles Connell. Colin is a serial co-founder of various tech startups, including Use-A-Lot, Social Pinpoint, and Dog-Eared. He has a solid background in software engineering, as well as a keen interest in the business side of tech companies. Charles is the other co-founder of Use-A-Lot and was also a co-founder at Social Pinpoint. He's passionate about helping startups to scale and succeed. Colin, Charles, thank you for joining me on Season 4, Episode 1 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
My pleasure. So, first of all, could you both tell me a little bit more about your background and personal story? And let's start with you, Colin.
Yeah, no worries. So you mentioned, obviously, I've got a technical background. Went through Newcastle University 20 years ago, getting on now. But yeah, ultimately started out as a software engineer through embedded computing into software development management. And that's sort of where I met Charles at a mining software company in Newcastle here. And then, left that to sort of start my own consulting gig, basically doing a lot of work around the Atlassian ecosystem of products, and did that for a good 5 years. And then in that process, Charles and me caught back up again. And at that time, we started to get a bit of a scratch the itch around starting to write a SaaS product. And then that's led to Social Pinpoint, which has pretty much been the last, 10 years of my life almost, or whatever it is, 8 years, 9 years, and Use-A-Lot in the last year or so. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Charles, tell me a bit more about your background and your story.
Yeah, thanks. So my background is in engineering. I studied engineering back in Canada, and I moved to Australia in, 2001, which means I've been here almost 20 years. Look at that. My first job, as Colin mentioned, was actually in mining technology, and that's where I met. I stayed in mining technology for around 10 years as well. I eventually started my own business, and it was acquired by a company called Datamine, which was... The timing of that was really good because it sort of was around when we started to focus on Social Pinpoint. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of my quick background.
Yeah, and I didn't realise you were from Canada, and I can hear your accent now.
That comes out.
But you've kind of been Australianised as well. So did you come straight to Newcastle, or?
Yeah, straight to Newcastle. I've spent some time up in Brisbane, Queensland, and most of the time here. It's a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, I've never been, but I hear it's very beautiful. So, Colin, what was your purpose when you set up Social Pinpoint?
I alluded to it at the beginning there, probably just initially it was I was looking for a SaaS product to write. So, moving away from consulting, moving away from, installed software and into, the web world, I guess. I felt like I was probably a little late as a web developer. I'm still probably not the greatest web developer, so to speak. But we're looking around for that. I had a few stints with a few other sort of projects, and then opportunity with Charles and some of the contacts he had came up to start building a product that was sort of in that engagement mapping space. So we're really from that, although Charles probably go into a little bit detail around his background there in the council sort of connections. But ultimately, we wanted to take in our technical expertise into that space, because once we started looking at it, it was obvious that a lot of the tech that was currently in that engagement council sort of engagement space was from people who are in that space and passionate, and they're awesome people, but they're not technologists. And so we wanted to bring that and sort of be the differentiator, really, low cost entry, click and pay on credit card and get going type thing. And it was a really good opportunity that we thought when we started learning about it, and that's sort of how we kicked it off, I guess.
That's fantastic. And as well, you started as an embedded software engineer, so that must have been very different from doing web development.
Oh, huge. I mean, not the degree helps you, but my degree was in computer science and computer engineering, so it covered everything. So so I guess my career's covered that as well. So from hardware all the way now up to software, and obviously nowadays I do a lot of cloud stuff as well. So there's that DevOps angle as well. So it gives you a good grounding, certainly when you're closer to the machine in the early days. But these days you don't overly need to worry about that, which is good.
Excellent. So a wide variety there. And Charles, is there anything that you'd like to add about the purpose behind Social Pinpoint?
Yeah, we sort of stumbled into it, actually. So like Colin mentioned, we were both sort of, aware that the SaaS world was sort of taking over. And my wife's actually a strategic planner for a local council. So they basically plan on what the future cities look like and involve sort of communities in those, planning and decision-making processes. And one of their projects, they were basically needing an interactive map to capture sort of location-based community feedback. And they were looking for vendors because there wasn't sort of an off-the-shelf solution. So we thought, we'll throw our hat in the ring because that's something that we could do. So I chatted to Colin. We thought, we could do that. We didn't actually win the job, but we sort of watched what happened when, the group that won the job, just the solution that they provided. And it ended up being quite an expensive solution. It was a one-off sort of custom-built, mapping solution. And I guess we both looked at it and thought, man, you could do that so much better.
Yeah.
So just by chance, through the consultant that was actually running that project, when a similar project came up a couple of months later, they invited us, I think, because they needed 3 quotes probably. And we were number 3. But we actually put in a proposal and we said, hey, instead of just doing this one custom-built solution, what if we built a platform that you could use for all of your projects and made it quite cost competitive? And luckily the council actually took a bit of a punt on us and agreed to go with us, even though we had nothing at the time. And so we worked pretty closely with them and built it up. And all of a sudden the phone started ringing. So we kind of knew we were on the right path.
That's really great. And you were competing with some really big players, and you win that contract there.
Yeah, big sort of, consultancy firms, that they were basically trying to use the platform to sell consultancy services. And, we went in from a more of a tech point of view of, look, here's something that you can use for all of your projects. And they got it. I think they saw it straight away. So, it was just a good opportunity and a good story.
And I think the other thing we did with it is almost from, I won't say day one, but it was probably 3 months in, was making sure that it's sort of global. So I think we won our first Canadian job, I think, wasn't it, Charles? Was that 6 months in or something like that? Was the Vancouver one or something like that? So it was built to be global from day one. So again, the competitors, and a lot of even nowadays, the Australian ones that are out there, they don't think like that. They've got more customers in Australia than they do anywhere else. So that's helped.
And I guess from a SaaS platform point of view, you're not restricted to one country or continent. You can go global, really.
No, that's right. I mean, there's data issues, but you can for sure.
Absolutely.
It has frustrated me working with other SaaS companies that, they'll sit down and look at how do we increase our growth in Australia. And I'm like, well, why would you even bother? There's 300 and something million people sitting, not far away that you can target as well. So, it's something I think all SaaS companies should just be a bit more mindful of. Is, there's a whole world out there, and the cost of reaching the whole world is not significant compared to, your local market.
Absolutely. And so your latest tech startup is Use a Lot.
Yes.
What was the purpose, Colin, behind Use a Lot?
Well, I mean, so a few things. Firstly, one of the struggles with Social Pinpoint has always been the fact that we aren't in, we just sort of told you that we weren't in sort of engagement expertise, came from the tech angle. And that's still a challenge as a founder when you're speaking about engagement, you're not an engagement practitioner, which it doesn't hurt Social Pinpoint by any means, but it is a different, it's always a challenge. But one of the things that we always did from Social Pinpoint was have a really good customer success. And that was our first person we ever hired was a customer success person. And so it's been founded into, I think part of our values and culture, how to look after the customer. And the word customer success, although these days is still fairly new, it's obviously a lot more known than it was back then. But I believe it's founded, the whole idea that your customer should be successful, I think really, grounds why you do these things. And so Use a Lot just sort of came from that, I guess, that there is other solutions out there and it's a huge market and it's growing. In 10 years, there's going to be 1,000 more times, the amount of SaaS companies out there on the web. So they will need solutions to manage their customers, and so that's where we started looking at it as a huge market opportunity.
That's great. And when was it founded? Use a Lot?
The product, probably 12 months ago is probably when we actually really kicked it off. Yeah. Yep.
So during COVID.
Yeah, COVID obviously was a part of it because Use a Lot was a pivot from another solution that I'd sort of spent a fair bit of time on, and just due to COVID, the circumstances changed, and the other platform was going to be targeting sort of early stage startups, which all of a sudden were very risk adverse and didn't have that sort of breathing room. So we pivoted into this more established business space, where you have existing revenue and there's more of an initial sort of return on an investment that can be shown pretty quickly. So yeah, I think the reason I wanted to get into Use a Lot, and Colin and I have talked about this a lot, is anyone who knows this know that we're very systemized in our approach to business. Every component of the business has to have a system. Otherwise, you just can't have repeatable processes and predictable revenue. And I think we both used to get quite frustrated at the customer success component of our business. And look, we didn't do a great job. We missed renewals. We had staff that spent too much time on sort of low value contracts instead of chasing expansion on high value contracts and all these sort of things. And it wasn't because we didn't know what we should be doing, but we just didn't have the system to drive those processes and sort of create that culture. And we also are the first two people to go out and just, if there's already something there that works, use it. Don't build your own. But there just wasn't the right solution. A lot of the existing platforms they're too geared to, that really sort of traditional SaaS model where you sign up for a demo, put your credit card in, convert your demo, and just keep renewing. Whereas I think we're a little bit more in that sort of B2B space where it's probably less customers but higher value customers, and that's where customer success is really important.
Absolutely, definitely. And Colin, you mentioned just before about your core values and how they really drive the culture there at Use a Lot. So can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I guess we're still growing out the team at Use a Lot. So, the values will grow with that. But, in general, I think Charles and I have I've especially taken a lot of the values out of even Atlassian's sort of core values, and that's grounded Social Pinpoint and, hopefully Use a Lot and all the other ones coming along after that. But ultimately they're, customer driven. We like, people who come with solutions rather than problems. That's a really big thing for us. And just getting stuff done, so let's say it without the French. But things like that I think has been really important.
The GSD. And customer first and solution driven and everything. So Social Pinpoint got acquired, when was it? By MyStudy Group?
I think it's 2 years now.
2 years ago. So tell me a little bit more about that acquisition and what advice you'd give to other startups who are considering being acquired.
I think with Social Pinpoint, right from the beginning, we had this plan just to see, can we actually build a SaaS product, get some traction and get acquired? We sort of watched other similar businesses and sort of watched as they raised capital and, went through various processes. And some of them were doing things that we just didn't want to do. And I don't know, we kind of always had this initial plan to, let's see if we can get acquired. We were very good friends with our competitors, which sounds strange, but and we still are to this day very good friends with our competitors. As it turned out, one of our competitors, our complementary products, was the company that ended up acquiring a lot of things that we did aligned with them, and the acquisition was literally negotiated over, at a pub over a few beers in Brisbane, and everything sort of seemed to fit, and we had common goals, and it was a fairly simple process, to be honest. I guess you're going to ask about what lessons did we learn from it, but the acquisition at the time was great. It was definitely something that was within the range that we were looking for at the time. Since COVID, the business has taken off. COVID was a very big catalyst for the growth of Social Pinpoint. So if you ask us now, would you have sold it the way you did back then, the answer would be no, but not entirely no, because going through that acquisition process is invaluable. You learn so much. There's so much more than just the dollar value that comes out of it. You learn so much, especially if you're sort of that serial entrepreneur like we are, that neither one of us are going to be content to be in the same business for the next 30 years sort of thing. We're always going to be starting something new. So yeah, there's a lot to be learned by just going through that process. So, that was something that we definitely value.
Yeah, and you couldn't have had a crystal ball to know what would have happened after you sold it as well. And I really like that idea of being friends with your competitors, because you can...
Yeah, Social Pinpoint has an entire blog post that Charles wrote about that, I think, in the early days, wasn't it? We played well with others, I think was the the title.
I'd love to, if you could send that to me, that would be fabulous. And I can add that in the show notes, because I think that's a really interesting approach. So it's not us against the world, it's us working together to find a solution. And you can pick up so much intel from your competitors, not to use against them, but just in the market generally. So I think
everyone has their unique sort of value adds, and everyone's product is probably more suited to the right sort of use case. And there's so many times where we have referred customers to one of our competitors because what they wanted was more suitable to what they were providing. And then what starts to happen is they start referring customers back to us because what we had was more suitable. So especially, I think, and it's the same with Use a Lot, like the market is so huge. The market is so big. I remember one of our competitors saying, I don't mind being friends with you guys because there's never money left on the table. You know what I mean? Like there's enough to do work for both of us that, we're not sort of stealing from each other kind of thing. So yeah, I think if you're in that sort of scenario where there's a huge market, like why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Grounds is probably a cultural thing too then, where if that melds into your staff, they know it's not about just sell for the sake of selling. It's like, let's sell, again, customer success, let's sell to people who we know are going to be successful. Let's not put it in somewhere that we're just going to be having to regret making that sale for the next 6 months or 12 months, And so that's why it's good to be friends with your competitors. And look, at the end of the day, especially there's integrations, there's new tech or new things you might want to investigate down the track. And some of the best ways to get them happening quicker is to get more of your competitors on board so you can bring things to market, to move the industry forward. So, yeah, I don't know. We've always enjoyed that. Makes conferences far more fun as well when you go out for beers with your competitors.
And I think it makes your customers happy too, because your customers usually are part of a larger organization, and the organization is probably going to use you both.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on the personal choice of who wants to use what. You just are acceptant of that, and I think there's just the customer always seems happier to see that you're friends with your competitors.
Yeah, I think, and just generally the working world has changed. Like the early 2000s, it was much more of a dog-eat-dog kind of world, whereas I think recruitment is a very competitive industry as well, but I find it's much better to be friends with your competitors. So with regards to Use a Lot, what are your plans over the next 5 years?
To rule the world.
We did joke, Charles can expand on that, but we did joke in the early, it is a big market, so we did joke that I remember talking to Charles saying, "Look, we just need to get to number 5 and we're going to be good." And he said, "Let's aim for number 6." That was a pretty good. We've got realistic goals of this, but it is a big market. Yeah, so
it is.
But yeah, I'll let Charles answer.
Yeah, it's a huge market, and I think our unique offering, I guess, it comes from the frustration that we had evaluating some of the other existing solutions where they were very difficult, expensive, took a long time to implement because of integrations or lack thereof integrations and just complexities that didn't need to exist. So I guess we're taking a more simplified approach that from, the potential customers I've talked to so far is a very welcome change. So, it'll just work straight away even without integrations. Deliver that sort of high value. Basically, growing more revenue from your existing customer base is something that all of us need to invest more in SaaS world. And everyone's starting to realize that. But with the process being led by a platform, it's really difficult to have a strong approach to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I guess similar to Social Pinpoint, right from day one, we're not going to be targeting locally. We're going to be targeting the world. And to do that, you've got to have a plan and strategies and probably need to employ people overseas. In fact, we have already. So, yeah, that's I think our early revenue probably is going to be more North American than Australian.
And the UK maybe as well?
Yeah, anywhere technically. Sure. Yeah. We obviously know the US market a little easier in terms of having the experience there, but yeah, like we wouldn't say no, and that's the thing. It's a global business from day one.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the team at Use-A-Lot is relatively small, but you built a larger team at Social Pinpoint. So how have you built, or what's your secret to building high performance software teams?
On the software front, it's really challenging actually at the moment, given it's stress. So in recruitment, trying to get talented technical people right now is a lot more money for probably a lot less experience than what it used to be. I think we were lucky. Not that I foresaw that. I mean, you always knew growth would take off at some point, but we've always, probably the bootstrap nature and everything of what we've done, we've always tried to grow through like the university systems, bringing graduates in and growing them in through our culture. And I think that's massively successful. I think I've had not so much with Social Pinpoint, but just in the past had a far worse rate trying to hire mid to experienced people and have them I have this theory that if you're, 5 or 10 years out of uni, you should never apply for a job. Like, why are you ever applying for a job? You probably don't hear that as a recruiter, but I mean, the good people don't go through recruitment and the good people don't go through, they go through their own network, So whenever you get someone through a job interview, if you're sort of job at say 10 years experience, it does make you wonder. To me, it's a flag that you look at, and there's probably good reasons sometimes, but my goal has always been bring them in young, bring them up through that, and also be really connected to your local network through meetups and stuff to make sure that your job, even though it's small or your company's small, it should be attractive where they know they can come and learn and they're going to grow in it, and they're not just going to be, fixing bugs and things like that. Charles might want to talk about the other avenues other than software. I mean, there's not just that.
Even with software, even on the software front, I think one of the keys to our success is that, you have to nurture all of your staff and you've got to put them in the best environment where they can perform at their maximum. And I think with software, with developers especially, our developers weren't locked away in a cave. They sat right beside our customer success people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For coffee every morning together. They went for lunch. When there was a customer on the phone, the software guys overheard the conversation. And there was so much back and forth. So I think when you talk about high performance, they were high performance because they were spending time on the right things. And they were spending time on the right things because they understood how what they were doing actually got used in the real world and the implications of getting it wrong or building the wrong features. So I think that's a big thing, is that your CS and your dev teams, your engineering people, they need to be best friends.
Yeah.
So that customer first approach throughout the organization and that cross-functional aspect as well.
Customer success is a business-wide concept, not a departmental concept.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wrote a growth chart once for a growth generation machine thing, and the whole thing was under a customer success banner, even though it had sales, marketing, dev, support. Because to me, customer success that's the whole thing. It's not just not just that one department. Yeah,
and it makes a big difference from a development point of view. If your team understands what your ideal customer lifecycle journey looks like, then they'll build for it. Because they know that they want that progression of adoption, expansion, loyalty, all those things. If they understand those concepts, they'll build for it.
Yeah, and also going back to actually finding the developers, sourcing them, the talent shortage, etc., etc. I completely agree with you. In terms of advertising, I don't do it anymore because you just don't get the right caliber of individual. So now I'm going out, typically talking to about 150 people, lots of passive candidates who aren't looking, but I'm intrigued them because of, for example, the last one was a position that I filled was within health tech, and they were really passionate about health tech, so that piqued their interest. So it seems to be much more cause and purpose driven rather than just any old development role, and the company values, all that kind of perspective. So yeah, it's particularly COVID has very much changed the landscape there, I think, over the last particularly this year and over the last 18 months. And in terms of your challenges, what have the main challenges been during both your startup journeys? And let's start with you, Charles.
Sure. Probably, we touched on building the right team, but it's definitely important. And we've just addressed some of the challenges, the current challenges with that. But I think there are a couple of key points. For one, selling anything is not easy. So you have to have a strategy. You've got to have a systemized approach. You have to have the right people. So that's always a challenge in any business. Like nobody just has sales flying off the shelf. That has to be a sort of process-driven thing. And I think the other challenge, obviously, especially in the early stages of the startup, is you're going to be working your butt off, and you've got to make sure that you balance your work with your life, your family, your relationships, all those sort of things. So you have to make sure, you get all excited about startups and growth and traction, but you've got to make sure that you don't lose focus of the other important things in your life. So that's always a challenge. Yeah. And then I suppose there's probably challenges around, obviously around funding, but those challenges disappear pretty quickly if you do focus on traction.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And Colin, what about you? What would you say the main challenges have been on your startup journey?
Personally, for me in the early days, it was that balancing thing, just because I think Charles and I are the same boat where you're technically the one breadwinner. And so you're trying to do something where you technically don't want to pay yourself a lot, but you still do. But you got mortgages and all that sort of stuff. So that's always been a challenge. And I'm also very focused. Like when I get onto something, I'll go deep into it. So that can, you just got to be very mindful of that. I think as I get older and we do other ones, that energy is different too as well as you get older. You can't, on one hand, you have more time because your kids get older. On the other hand, I'm not coding to 4 a.m. anymore. So I'm sure there's going to be other challenges that are going to be different to the first one. It's not always going to be the same as these things move on.
And when you say as you get older, is that not having as much energy to, for example, code at 4 o'clock in the morning, or
just to be
could
clear,
be that? But I get up earlier too, so I don't know. What was that?
Yeah.
I was going to say, just to be clear, Colin said he's getting older, not me.
And getting back to youth, my final question for you both is: you're 21. What advice would you give to your 21-year-old self? And we'll start with you, Colin. You mentioned age.
Yeah, the first one would be buy Bitcoin when it comes out, but probably can't do that. Look, the other thing, it's going to sound a little bit counterintuitive since we sold Social Pinpoint, but I think being in it for the long haul, if anything, and not just startups, but investments in general, sort of fallen into that, that it's time in the market, not timing the market. And I think even just any startup business, if you've got any sort of traction or you can sell, like Charles was talking about, then it's really hard to go wrong if you just keep at it. You know what I mean? And so it's just a matter of to do that though, you've got to love what you do. So that's then, if you love doing business, you love building the product you're in or whatever in the team, then just stick with it. And I think that is going to pay off massive dividends down the track. It's never let's do this and in 5 years we'll be rich and we're going to retire. And that's never been in my head. I don't think I will retire. So it's just, how do I do it so I control my life, and I can live how I want to live, that type of thing.
And do what brings you joy and puts you in flow rather than kind of, oh gosh, I've got to do this. Yeah, definitely. And Charles, what would you tell your 21-year-old self?
Yeah, just work hard, take risks, and make sure you enjoy the ride, I think, is all the things that we've touched on.
Do you know, that's really funny? The last podcast I did, she said exactly the same thing, enjoy the ride, which I thought, she's Irish. But yeah, that was great advice. And kind of similar to you as well, Colin, about love what you're doing as well.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights, Colin and Charles. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Not really. Just I mean, if you check out our website, we're always after some advice, or if there's anything out there, like just feedback in general. Not asking for a sale here or anything, but always keen to hear what people think about, especially if there is any other SaaS companies listening to this and have their own struggles. We're always love to hear about it.
Absolutely, and obviously got quite a lot of connections with other SaaS companies, so I might be able to do some introductions for you there and what have you. And Charles, what about you? Any other insights or comments?
Colin's already stolen my shameless plug. I was going to put in. No, look, I think one good thing about the startup community is that people are always open to give advice and talk to each other and share insights and stuff like that. So, if somebody is starting out with a startup, or they're struggling with the startup, or they've stalled, like that's definitely what you should do, is just reach out and talk to people, because everyone's sort of happy to help. I think there's that culture in the whole startup space that we should all take advantage of.
Absolutely. And that's what I really love about that space, is that people are like that, having those really good relationships and helping people out and all that kind of aspect. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. It was good.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for career advice, your next career opportunity, or to grow your tech team, then please call me, Nicholas Steele, on 0499 773 546, or go to our website, jjptalent.com.au. The Don't Just Survive, Thrive podcast is part of the Spotlight series, which includes the YouTube channel Spotlight on Software Development. If you want more insights into the software industry, particularly tech startups, then subscribe to the Spotlight on Software Development YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time.